We've all heard that a legally binding contract as a physician-patient relationship starts the moment they walk into your exam room. But in a functional integrative practice, the true healing begins the moment a patient says yes to work with your services. And this is an opportunity to create a trauma-informed and neurodivergent inclusive onboarding experience. This is episode 4 in my 4-episode mini-series on how to make a trauma-informed onboarding experience. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the 8 key elements to include in the first 100 feet as your patients are journeying to start working with you. When you learn how to give safety and comfort, patients are able to relax and feel more self-expressive, which only enhances the healing journey and helps you uncover their clues even quicker. So stay tuned. At the end of this episode, I have a special offer for you. Welcome to The Catalyst Way, the podcast for women clinicians ready to clear the chaos and create space to flourish. I'm Dr. Lara Salyer, a former burned out family practice doctor turned mentor, author, and professional calendar whisperer. I help women in medicine reclaim time, trust their intuition, and build practices that actually fit their lives. Each week, you'll get practical tools, creative strategies, and tiny shifts that help you color outside the lines and paint a work-life masterpiece of authentic, aligned joy. All right, so let's dig into episode 170. Now, normally I start each episode with a thrilling story, and really there isn't one story that inspired this whole mini-series. I'm actually sad this is the last episode in my mini-series, and if you missed the first 3, please listen. I go through all of the ways that we can enhance our onboarding experience. Here, let's recap all the other episodes in case you missed it. If you want to start with the mini-series, we begin on episode 167, where we talk about red flags and green flags and how you can screen without guilt. Then we move to 168, where we talk about what to say and not to say on a discovery call. Again, we're looking to create this seamless integration process that feels very natural and working with patients as coworkers, as you are their guide in their healing journey, feels so much easier when you have all these pieces in place. Then last week, we had episode 169, where we talked about what happens after the yes and trying to optimize that post-discovery call window so that patients know what to expect and feel supported. And this is the last one in my mini-series. It is the first steps in delivering your trauma-informed welcome. And this is so important. The first 100 feet. Patients are eager, they're excited, they're bringing in a lot of ideas and maybe assumptions or limiting beliefs. And so are you. We're all human. And we're in this relationship together, as imperfect and messy as it is. And so honoring yourself and understanding the limits that you bring, the biases, the ways that you woke up that morning, learning how to center yourself, all these self-care tools are really important when you're working with patients in an intimate, functional, integrative setting, because as you know, we pull from all modalities. And I believe that true healing isn't in a vacuum. It isn't one system of healing. Allopathic, osteopathic, naturopathic, Chinese medicine. Many of my catalysts inside my studio will pull from all sorts of different modalities that they've learned from. And that, I think, is why it is so magical when you work with a patient that can benefit from all the knowledge that you've trained for and use in your membership practice. So this is super important. As you can nail this process of the first 100 feet, it only enhances all the wonderful wisdom you're able to share with a patient. Let's talk about why trauma matters when you're onboarding your patient. In a functional and integrative practice, we meet people that may have had symptoms for a long time. They may have been chronically dismissed or invalidated. It could have taken years to arrive at a diagnosis, or maybe they still haven't even arrived. They're still exploring, they're confused, their body isn't behaving how they expected at their age, or they're scared. And it's important that you recognize this fear and anxiety can be an undercurrent in many of our patients. And especially if we have neurodivergent patients, we might need predictability, clarity, certainty, and low sensory overload. When you think of having patients in your practice, maybe they're already having brain fog from mold exposure, or their hormones aren't balanced, or their cortisol is way out of whack. And then if you layer on trauma and then neurodivergent spectrum, we really should be careful on how we invite patients into this healing journey. The right tone, the right feelings and emotions, and the right state of your physiology can make a huge difference in whether they are soaring or yet you're another hatch mark in their trial of providers and they haven't gotten any benefit from. So a welcoming experience helps decrease that cortisol, it helps build that trust, and it sets you off on the right foot. So let's talk about the first 100 feet. And what do I mean by that? I mean that I was always taught in my years as a musician, playing clarinet in orchestras and bands in college and beyond. Our conductors always said, your audience is going to only remember your first and last note. So make it really good. Yeah, if you have mistakes in the middle, it won't be as memorable as that last note. So you can overshadow any of these missteps by just making sure you nail the beginning and nail the ending. And I've heard this advice over and over in other industries, public speaking. If you open that talk well and you end it well, nobody will remember if you missed a few things in the middle, right? I'd like to say parenting maybe is that way, but no, I think parenting is always an upward spiral of learning and mistakes, and we just tend to recover, right? So this first 100 feet is about setting that tone. It's about showing them, they're walking through this metaphorical door. And whether it's in your actual office or online, maybe you only do virtual services like me. What are those first sights, sounds, feelings? What are you invoking in them? And how are they feeling when they're in your presence? If it's a virtual door, you can look at the emails, the PDFs that you're sending, the videos or the texts that they're receiving. And we're going to cover all of this in today's episode because there are 8 key trauma-informed elements that you don't want to miss in your first 100 feet. So let's get to it. First, set up multiple ways that they're reminded about their initial visit, a text, an email. And the reason is we're busy, we've got lots going on, but also you want to make sure that they feel welcomed. Nothing is worse than setting up an appointment for something really important, possibly expensive, maybe something you've been waiting for that might have the answer to some of your symptoms, and then hearing nothing for weeks until their appointment is there. And then maybe it's like a quick 5-minute reminder that they have an appointment in 5 minutes. That just feels isolating and lonely. And so one of my favorite ways is to reward that appointment booking with a confirmation, a receipt of booking that shows your face. Give a little Loom video recording. It can be really short. It can just show your excitement, your passion, and your smile. Give them your energy. Give them a dose that they made the right decision. And you can confirm that by saying, I'm so glad that you booked this appointment. I can't wait to work with you. And you can set the tone already by saying you can expect 2 more reminders so that we don't forget this appointment. It's really important, right? Set the framework that what they can expect is going to happen. That is predictability that also helps ease this trauma brain that we're walking around with, right? Also, help them feel prepared. You may want to add little things in the list. For example, where to park, what to bring, or if you're online, when they're going to get the online link for their appointment, or how to reach you if there's a sudden urgent need to reschedule or cancel, or where to look for those buttons or ways to cancel their appointment. All those things help them feel like they are welcomed, they are prepared, they have a little bit of a lay of the land. Quick pause. If you're loving this podcast and secretly dreaming about building a functional or integrative practice that doesn't burn you out, you're my person. Catalyst Studio is the 12-month mentorship for women clinicians who want to build or scale a membership-style practice. We mix practical business strategy with creativity and flow so that you can build a thriving practice that actually fits your life. Come join us. It is the mentorship I wish I had had. You'll find all the information at drlarasalyer.com/catalyst. The second part is a thoughtful questionnaire that is trauma-informed. Now, this is not in any particular order. You might have your questionnaire happen before they book their initial visit, but in this instance, having a thoughtful questionnaire that is sprinkled with very reflective questions will help invite the patient into deeper thinking. And it also helps you spot limiting beliefs or worldviews that they might be bringing into their visit so that you can accommodate, right? For example, and here are some of my favorite questions that I've added to my intake over the year. I ask gentle questions about how they define family. Who is their family? It's not always their biological family or their partner. It could be a neighbor that they consider near and dear because they've grown to love them for 15 years. Or perhaps they live in a house of 3 other roommates and that's their core tribe of family. So ask them how they define family. Who do they lean on when times are hard? Then ask them about their culture, when they grew up, their childhood. How did their family of origin express emotions? This helps you see, were they allowed to be freely expressive? Were they held to a different standard? Do they still use these same kind of preconceived notions moving forward? Do they suppress their emotions, maybe compartmentalize? And again, none of these are wrong answers. You're trying to understand how they process and where they might be sick in their body. Because as you know, if you're not processing emotions, they might need extra help with that. Number 3, I like to ask, what do they feel like an expert in? This gives them a chance to kind of geek out or express something they're really excited about. They love learning, they love gardening, they feel like they're an expert in woodworking. It gets like a little opportunity for me to know what lights them up. I also like to ask, how will I know when you're struggling or need help? That's a very difficult thing for anybody to raise their hand and say, I don't understand, or I need a minute. And many of them will say, I just won't be reaching out. It gives me an opportunity to, in their first visit, zero in on that. I hear that you tend to isolate yourself when you're struggling or you disengage from services. So if that happens, what's a good way for me to re-engage with you that feels comfortable? And finally, I talk about this in their initial visit because I explain this connects the dots between body and mind because they are so intertwined that our emotions can affect how we feel and how we feel can affect our body and our symptoms and all the way in the reverse. There's a bidirectional feedback loop. And so these questions are helping me understand them better. Of course, I add words like this in the copy and the text of my questionnaire so it feels a little more comfortable and not as prying. So pause this if you're thinking of any inspirational questions. I would love to hear, drop them below this video or this podcast. What questions do you ask in your intake questionnaire that feel supportive and trauma focused? Okay, now on to number 3. I like to include a warm welcome packet. Okay. Now, this, even if you're doing digital services, which I am, you can still create a personal touch. This feels like a human to human connection, right? So I mail my patients a welcome packet. And I've talked about this in many other podcast episodes. You can actually go to my page and just search welcome kit. And what I like to do is include an informational brochure, a vitamin container. But when I brought this question to my Catalyst studio, they had a lot of reflection. It was really good. They talked about how they like to set up comfort and a trauma-informed relationship with their patients by giving them simple steps, right? Their welcome packet might have a page that says, here are the 4 steps to expect, right? Dumbed down, right? Not because of intelligence, but just because we want this to feel achievable. This is not the time to just unearth a glossary of words that people may not be familiar with, right? Neuroendocrine system, HPA axis imbalance, right? All of these things that are fluent language for us may feel a little overwhelming. And it sets them to feel like they already don't know what's happening, right? We want this to feel like a common language. So another catalyst said that they include a glossary of terms, which I thought was a fantastic idea, is a little page that here's a glossary of terms that you might come across. And that gives them the invitation that, hey, I want you to feel included. I want you to feel in the know, in the conversation. Another catalyst commented on her experience in another industry. She signed up for daycare for her children, and she really appreciated their welcome packet because they included an FAQ page, but also when to look for childhood delays. So, like a milestone marker for her kids. And she thought that was great. She put that on her fridge, right? So, think about how can you look at other industries and how they welcome you into their services. What would you put in your welcome packet for your patients? What would you like them to have in their hands that sets them up for success, right? Maybe it's an MSQ, maybe it's a promise score sheet, maybe it's some way that they can measure themselves, right? And keep track. And it helps them feel like they're the good student that they want to be in learning about their body. Number 4, a little intro video, right? This is great because this can help you show your own personality. Again, nobody's perfect. Nobody has all the answers. No one version of medicine has all the answers, but patients have signed up to work with you because of your special blend. And when I work with women in medicine, we help fortify boundaries. We help extend our services beyond what we're taught and give permission to explore our passions. So many of our catalysts are acupuncturists, are using interesting vagal stimulator modalities in their practice or other modalities, IV therapies, peptides, and there's room for it all. And you're allowed to be that passionate provider that is bending time and giving your patients your attention and your ability to heal them in new ways. So, this introductory video can be a great opportunity to say, again, I'm excited to see you in a day. And using this as an opportunity to give an orientation to your services. Show them the little back room, whether it's your office, where they'll be headed, where the waiting room is, what the exam room looks like, or if it's virtual, give them a one-on-one demonstration of what a typical, visit summary might look like. Obviously, not a real one, a sample one, or where your dashboard is that your patients go to make an appointment or to access a library of information. Giving them this one-on-one onboarding orientation is so great because they're able to take their time and watch. And then it gives them that comfort level, right? Patient onboarding can happen even after their first visit. So sometimes if you're rushed and you feel like you're doing the first visit and you don't feel comfortable giving this onboarding video before, you can also do it afterwards. You can do both. Some of our practitioners have found that patients are so busy, they never really watched any of the videos, and then they regret, oh, I did miss that email you sent. Can I see it again? So they often send a second one after the visit. In case you missed the onboarding, here's another recap. Same thing, same video. They're more in a space of comfort because they've spent an hour with you on your initial visit, and they're more absorbing that information because it's more relevant. They have hooks in their memory now because they just sat with you and you explain things. And now they're going to go, okay, now where do I find that? So you can repeat that again. Number 5, consider offering flexible appointment options, not just with the type of appointment, but also the times, right? Especially in the demographic you're serving. If you are working with stay-at-home moms, you might notice that nap time in the afternoon might be a popular time that people are choosing. So what other times can you accommodate an easy way that stay-at-home moms can access your services? Maybe after their partner comes home. If you're working with CEO types, right? Think about the day is probably not going to be easy for them. Maybe you offer a special evening hour for your top tier patients that these evening hours are priority booking, right? So flexible appointment times, but also the options of appointments in person versus online versus on the phone. You can offer a select variety, and this will help accommodate those times when maybe they're not feeling camera ready or they just have the energy to listen but not really respond. They're feeling tired. Accommodating this is a human to human acknowledgement that not every day is going to feel good. And one of our catalysts, when we talked about this in our studio, she mentioned that she felt really good when people on the other side of the service, whatever service it was, helped her feel included. She felt like she was one of the crew, and she noticed that this happened when there was attunement, right? A verbal gaze, acknowledgement with head nods, your tone, laughing at jokes, feeling your shoulders relax, watching your own physiology and attuning to their physiology is a wonderful way to help them feel really present in that appointment as you're talking to them. Again, this is about human connection and understanding that this can feel scary. But as you get used to holding these appointments and offering this flexibility and trauma focused care, it can really lead to great outcomes sooner than later. Number 6, I like to look at my words every so often. And what I mean by that is look at your consent. Look at the language you use. Is it very legal? Probably, because we need to. But again, think about how it reads. Is it threatening? Is it having undertones of anticipating conflict, right? I mean, obviously, we need to be clear. We need to be boundaried about, no-shows and fees and, ways to cancel. All those things are very important, and they can come across feeling very rigid because they have to be clear. But words matter. Make sure you're not using words that set basically an unachievable goal like cure, fix, resolve. There is no guarantee in the practice of medicine, no matter what medicine you're doing. So make sure that you're gently explaining you're putting in effort, the patient is putting in effort, and together you're going to go on a healing journey. There's no guarantees. And I also like to include words that help explain we aren't broken. We aren't a problem. These aren't issues to correct or fix. That this is an exploration, an education in what might be going on in your body. And I'm inviting them to learn. So this might be another way you can put a glossary of terms, in this consent form to explain what you mean by a health journey, right? What is your definition of your services that you will be giving them an hour every month or access to group visits, all these wonderful ways that you can explain further your intention of delivering medical healing services. Number 7, I love giving choice. So look for opportunities of choice. And we talked about that just a few moments ago with choosing the kind of appointment, whether it's a phone appointment, online appointment, in-person appointment. But I also like opportunities of choice every single part of their relationship with me. And it begins in that first visit, right? In that intake questionnaire, I ask, how am I going to know when you're struggling, right? But I also like to ask in this initial visit, would you like to automatically receive homework? Right? So in their visit summary, I have a bonus section that I demarcate with a line, and then underneath I put all the supportive articles or videos or classes I may have filmed or infographics. And I separate that from their action list because people can feel really overwhelmed with the traditional SOAP note format in a functional setting. In a SOAP note format, we do the assessment plan. Assessment is your diagnosis. Plan is this long, huge thing in a functional medicine service. So instead, what I do is I modify this and I have like your action bullet list, which is simple, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, here are your supplements. I don't say what they're for. I don't say why. I just say, here they are and here's the dose. 2, here's the lab kit we are going to be ordering. I don't tell them why. I don't say when. I just say, this is what it is. Expect it in the mail, et cetera, et cetera. Then I have a line, and underneath I put the supporting information. What the lab we are ordering is. What is it going to detect? How do you submit your specimen, et cetera? What are the supplements that we're using and why? And the reason I do this is not everybody wants the detail. And I ask people, do you want automatic details included, or do you want the option to say no, thank you? Some people are just tired. They have so much brain fog. They're ready for you just to take the lead. And so I leave that open and say, you have choice here. You can choose. You can choose to say, I don't want that. But I also give them that kind of subtle choice by putting a line. And I say underneath, optional homework, right? Because on the day of their appointment, they may have been gung ho about the homework. And then they get home and they're like, I'm totally tired and devastated. And then I see them next month. I don't want them feeling guilty that they didn't complete the homework. So I always put on there, this is all optional. This is about you learning about your body. And this is just for your reference. Some of our catalysts also discussed that when they would sign on to other industries, they really hated how that service talked at them instead of invited them into conversation. So you can avoid this by doing these kinds of opportunities for choice. During your initial visit, after you review their history, ask them, is this a good time for us to go to the physical exam? Or is this a good time for us to shift and talk more about your headaches? Is this a good time? Like just asking those little pivots of consent gives them this feeling that they are steering the ship, they are in control. And that is a wonderful way to lay that foundation that you're partnering with them, but they are ultimately the captain of their ship. And also, when you're trying to avoid talking at them, and believe me, as a passionate, holistic practitioner, we love talking about all the wonderful ways to heal. It can end up being a monologue. So when you feel that in your body, and I hear you, I'm an over talker as well. There's a certain place in my body I can tell that I've been talking too long. And I've had to train that down with a podcast because you're supposed to talk for a while on a podcast. So I've had to snooze that a little bit. But when I find that I've been talking too long, I pause and I ask for their opinion. Does this seem to make sense to you? Is there a question you have about what I had just said, right? Pause. Asking them to contribute to that conversation is simple, easy, and it's a great habit. And if you're looking for more ways to invite this kind of healing in community, giving opportunities for choice and for collaboration, listen to episode 99. I talked with Dr. Jeff Geller. He is a master at group visits, and this is exactly why group visits are amazing. They can help fill in that gap for patients when they may want to learn, but they really don't know the questions that they have, and they're happy to sit and listen as we all discuss together. Another catalyst said, the opportunity for choice is important, especially when it comes to videos. She noticed that she would talk a lot in her videos, and the more she's been running her functional medicine membership, the videos get shorter and shorter, and patients love it. They love the ease and accessibility of getting their labs, reviewed on video. And it's only like a 10-minute video. And they share it to their husband or their cousins or their brother and sister to show, look at, I'm not crazy. I did know what was going wrong. There was something wrong in my body. It's a great opportunity. So think again about how are you inviting them to make choice? How are you inviting them to step forward and give their permission to move to a different part of their intake exam or to have homework or not? And this helps build that trust for your relationship. The last key metric for a trauma-informed process in your first 100 feet of onboarding is anticipate ghosting and don't take it personally. Okay. What I mean by that, lots of things happen in that initial visit, right? And patients can feel overwhelmed. You've given them insight that maybe they've never had. You've given them hope that maybe they haven't had in a while. You've shown them glimpses of their biochemistry they didn't even know existed. And so they're absorbing that. They're taking it in, they're processing this, but they're also seeing the work ahead, right? Maybe you've asked them to eat differently, to move differently, to sleep differently. And that can take a little time to grieve. And that can also take a little time for them to get the energy up to make those changes. So there is that void that can happen after that initial visit where patients are reluctant, they're processing, maybe they're just working through it and things get overwhelming and they may lose themselves in the process. So anticipate that ghosting may happen and set yourself a trigger. Yourself or your staff, if you haven't seen a resultant behavior in 30 days, for example, let's say you have a membership practice, which is what I teach inside Catalyst Studio. And a membership practice means that for a minimum number of months, your patient or client is going to pay you monthly for services. And in that month, you guarantee access to certain services. It doesn't mean that they will always partake in them, like a gym, right? You pay for a gym membership. You may not go and work on your biceps that month at all. Maybe you have an injury, so you're working on your legs, but you're still paying for all the equipment. And oftentimes we feel this tug of, wait, I haven't seen them in a while, right? So where is that boundary for you? Can you set up a trigger that if they haven't booked their appointment in 30 days by X number of weeks, that you have a staff reach out or you reach out, just checking in. How you doing? I noticed I haven't seen you in a while. Are you making use of all the other things available in membership, right? You don't have to be apologetic about this. This is on them to book the appointment. It's that boundary of, the fine line of you aren't trying to pull them through chains, but you're just reminding them of the opportunities they have at their feet. And this really helps them feel supported and connected. This reminds me of a story one of our catalysts said in our mentorship mastermind last Friday, where she said she signed up for an online dog training class and felt great. She purchased it, awesome, and then never signed in. And how many of us have done that? I've done that so many times. If you're a practitioner running online courses, that is a common occurrence. Patients will purchase your course. They might watch that first day or that first video and then never complete it. The stats for adult learning are really dismal. It's like 15% of adult learners will complete an online course. It's really, really difficult to self-pace your own learning. And so, as you've probably noticed, a lot of the more modern courses will have drip content or will nudge you if you haven't signed in. And those are great. You might have to consider that if you're running online courses. But if you're running a membership and you're doing one-on-one services or group visits, make sure you do the same kind of approach. Help them feel included. Provide some little nudges, non-judgmental, just checking in. Hope you're finding the resources helpful. Let us know how we can help. The catalyst question I'd like for you to think about this next week is think back to a time that you joined something new. Maybe it was a club, a class, a gym, a membership. And what was missing in your onboarding experience? What could have been improved? And how can you infuse that into your patient services? We can learn a lot from the other industries. And I look forward to hearing your answers. Drop them below or book a free brainstorming session with me with the code PODCAST. This is a special code for my listeners. I love meeting women in medicine that are reinventing modern medicine on their own terms, ready to activate their own energy, fortify their boundaries, and deliver medicine that truly heals people. So in this brainstorming session, we'll get on Zoom and I would love to hear your next steps. What are you struggling with? And I can help support you in any way I can. Use the code PODCAST to book the brainstorming session. I'll put the link in the show notes. And thank you for coloring outside the lines. I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to The Catalyst Way, where we clear the chaos and create space to flourish. If today's episode lit a spark in you, please take the Catalyst Archetype quiz. It's free, fun, and freakishly accurate. Go to drlarasalyer.com/create. In less than 5 minutes, you will uncover your burnout risk, learn your creative strengths, and the work rhythms that actually energize you. Because it's not about finding the perfect plan, but rather flowing with the one that fits you. Go to drlarasalyer.com/create and take the quiz now. Remember, tiny shifts catalyze immense impact. So keep coloring outside those lines.